every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
You need the right people in the right place at the right time. And sometimes you have the right people in the right place, but at the wrong time.
I've got to keep going forward. I've got to keep looking for revenue streams. I've got to keep looking for growth, keep looking at new ways of doing things.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development program I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favorite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. On this week's episode of ScaleUp Radio, we have one of our presentations for you around the theme of empowerment. And when we talk about empowerment, we're referring to the team within your business, and it's all about accountability and responsibility and taking ownership for the work that they do. For some business owners, for some of us, empowerment is a difficult area to work through because it's about giving up some element of control, but without feeling that we're out of control. So there's all sorts of things going on there, like, do we trust people to do things correctly? Will they do them as well as we would do? And we also describe it as going from a leader-follower type model, which we all need to do at the beginning, to more of a leader-leader type model. And as always, with these presentations on ScaleUp Radio, there's loads of advice and practical help that you can put into practice straight away. And we cover plenty of subjects, including how and where empowerment needs to begin within your business and why trust is such a major part of the process, why empowerment isn't just handing over the business, and how you go about creating a framework to really deliver on empowerment, and how a system of empowerment also needs to have something called the business rhythm to be in place to get the most out of it. And we've covered that in a previous topic on ScaleUp Radio. You'll also hear from other business owners in a panel who discuss their own approaches to empowerment and the challenges that they have faced when trying to implement empowerment. And I also mentioned some tools and some images within this presentation. And if you'd like a copy of them, then there's an email address in the show notes for you to get hold of us. Enjoy this episode. This time it's around empowering our team. So it comes from the accountability section of our wheel. And this is around it's around having a culture of individual accountability and joint responsibility. But the particular element that we're looking at is that individuals are empowered to make decisions for their area of responsibility. So that's what we're looking at. And we've talked a little bit about this scale-up journey. And typically, where it becomes really important, obviously, is when we start to take people on. So certainly from the 3 to 5 stage onwards, but real crunch point is around that 8 to 12, when we're trying to move from beyond there. And we're trying to move really from a leader follower type model to a more of a leader model. And what a challenge that we all face is that we can end up getting trapped in our business, where essentially, as the owner, we're the person that set the business up. We have all the knowledge. We've probably got the most industry knowledge, and customers want to talk to us as the owner of the business. And that typically means that because we want to please customers and we can do it, when the customer asks us to do something a bit extra, we start to offer and agree to do those things. So we start doing more things than perhaps what we started off thinking about doing in the first place. And because other people within the business don't have the same level of industry knowledge and expertise, then it tends to be that we're the only ones that are really capable of delivering everything that comes through, or the requests that come through, which means that we're typically interfacing more and more with the customer, and that cycle repeats, and it's quite hard to break. And we can see that some of the signs that we might be in that is that maybe the business slows down when we're away, if we're away on a long holiday or something like that. But also we see the customers always coming back to us when something goes wrong within the business, as opposed to somebody within the team. And maybe the turnover has reached a plateau. It could be quite early on in the business, or it could be quite late. But if we see that plateauing, that could be an indication of the fact that we've got a little bit of owner's trap. Now, this is hard for all sorts of other reasons, and it's quite hard sometimes because we feel that we're losing control. How do we give control to other people without feeling that we're losing control? And one of the bits of research that we did looking at the challenges as business owners scale up, you can see here by turnover and those bands, and if you, the ones that I've ringed here, getting staff to think and act for themselves and take responsibility as we would like becomes increasingly important in terms of the challenges that business owners say that they're the number one challenges as we scale. So it obviously starts to make an appearance at around about when we get 3 to 5 employees, around about maybe the £500,000 turnover to £1 million, but it becomes increasingly important as we grow. And in fact, if you look at some of the other challenges under there, then a lot of those are people related as well as we scale. And one of the aspects that we think about here as well is our personality types. The kind of people that are great at getting a business off the ground may not be the kind of people that are great at getting a team alignment and building that as we grow. And we're looking, if those of you that are familiar with the DISC profiling, where we might look at the Ds, and on the left here we've used the peregrine falcon to represent those Ds, the dominant characteristics, and we've used a dove on the right hand side to represent more of the S, the team building characteristic. And you can see that whilst the falcon may have all of some particular aspects about really getting things going, and these are the challenges that they typically face, the one that they struggle the most with compared with the doves is attracting and retaining staff. And as the people issues start to come through, so there's something to think about. If we're the kind of people that are great and needed to really get the drive going in the business, are we going to be able to transition our leadership style a little bit to managing those staff issues? And part of the advice that everybody gives is to systemize things, and make a process for all of the key aspects of the business. And yes, that's absolutely key. But also, part of the challenge is we have this view of leadership that a leader should be somebody that takes control and attracts followers, whereas actually what we need to be thinking about is moving from that to giving control and creating leaders. And this is that aspect of moving from a leader-follower model to a leader-leader model. And what do we mean by that? Well, if you think about these characteristics for a leader follower, and this may be you, if you're really driving your business forward, taking control, attracting followers, giving orders, training others, maybe providing the best solutions, being really resolute and being really succinct in your communications, and making inefficient processes efficient. So, all good characteristics. The leader model is more about then, as I say, giving control and creating leaders, but giving intent rather than necessarily direct orders and instructions, and allowing others to learn a bit more, allowing others to find solutions, and leaving room for questioning. It's not always that there is my way is the only way, or my way or the highway. And it's about having those conversations, being curious, and also then eliminating processes that don't add value. So think about that, and think about the way that maybe you're acting as the leader within the business. Are we more of the leader follower aspect, or are we starting to transition to the leader? And of course, how do we create leaders? And that's something we need to be doing within the business. And first of all, we need to accept that we have to trust others to do a good job, and that we need to empower others within the business. Now, that's not about abdication. Delegation is not abdication. We're not just saying, well, you get on with it, you do it. We've got to give the guidelines and the framework as to how to operate and how to do that. But that delegation then becomes a sign of strength. And of course, it starts with us, and culture within the business plays a huge role here. And I mentioned that idea of trusting other people. And I think, Granger, can I bring you in here actually?
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. I just wanted to sort of bring out this concept of trust. You know, if you think about yourself, how did you build trust in what you do and achieve? Well, you did that through experimentation. Okay, so you practiced, you found different ways of achieving what you did in terms of growing your business and your processes. As you take on people, trust comes when you give them the chance to experiment. And that means that, you know, they may sometimes fail and not deliver what you expected in terms of doing things. But if you turn around and turn that into a negative, that's when you'll start to lose the trust. So you need to trust them, trust that they will fail, just like you did, but support them to become successful. And then they'll be like you in terms of driving forward. So that trust comes from allowing people to experiment, allowing them to learn and grow themselves.
Brilliant. Thank you, Granger. So it starts with us. Now, something I'm going to suggest that you have a look at is a chap called David Marquette has written a book called Turn This Ship Around, and he's a submarine naval captain. And he vowed never to give an order again when he took over on a new class of nuclear submarine, and replace it by giving intent. So he recognized basically that there's no way that he could run that model where he was the clever one and he got 230 other people, that he could do all the thinking for them and telling them all what to do on his submarine. So he turned that around and, as I say, gave intent and allowing other people then to think. The only order that he kept hold of was the one to launch nuclear missiles. He felt that wasn't appropriate to allow other people to take on that responsibility. But apart from that, he replaced everything with giving intent. So where do we need the intent is to position the submarine where we can have the most influence on this campaign, rather than saying we need to position the submarine at this point, at this depth, and give them more specific instructions. He was allowing other people then to make the recommendations based on the intent. But again, you can't just abdicate it. You've got to give control in a framed way. And the two pillars that he talks about giving control are technical competence and organizational clarity. So people have got to have the technical ability to do it. And in his world, that's about, is it safe? Is it safe to dive the submarine to this particular depth or put it there? But also the organizational clarity about where we're headed with the business. And again, we remember we're not necessarily, when we talk about leaders here, we're not necessarily talking about somebody who is going to be the leader of the business. We're talking about leaders within their individual roles and creating lots of leaders within people's roles. And if we look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, it's around that self-actualization side of things at the top. Luke, I think you wanted to add something in here.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So we've spoken, some of the words that we've used are trust, experiment, support, all of those sorts of things. And then Kevin's given us this framework as to how do we give away that control to create that trust. So I'm going to borrow quite liberally here from Simon Sinek. And he basically puts it this way, is that we need to ask ourselves as to how do we create an environment where our people can work at their natural best. And if you think about it, it's the leader's responsibility to create the environment where we can give away that control. And leadership is essentially not about being in charge. It's about looking after the people in your charge. And if you add that to giving control and the technical competence and organizational clarity that's needed, you then start creating a structure or an environment where you can build these trusted teams that will feel supported. So from a technical perspective, they need to know exactly what good looks like, how they're going to build their work to get to the level of compliance that we would need. And from an organizational clarity perspective, if you think about it, driving down the road and you're not entirely sure where you're going, you tend to be quite slow and quite timid. But if you know where you're going, you get there quite quickly. So why don't we apply that same logic to somebody in their working environment of saying, you're going to get there a lot faster if you do these things. And when you're giving away control, in this instance, there are a couple of things that we can do that can really make sure that we do mitigate any potential downsides to it. And if you think about the Smart 90 planning that we do, is a great structure to make sure that we can keep control over these things. And the other thing is the business rhythm. If you've got a good business rhythm within your business, that means you will have enough time to find those little checkpoints and make sure that everybody's on track. So you've given that control, you've created the trusted team, but you've got those little checks and balances in place. And more importantly, support for the staff that are taking over that leadership role. And if you're unfamiliar with those concepts of the Smart 90 or the business rhythm, and I promise you, I'm not going to sing the rhythm is going to get you now, but if you're unfamiliar with any of those things, please do reach out to one of the BizSmart teams, or Kevin covers it very thoroughly in his book. So either of those will give you a good structure in which you can give control safely within your business.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Luke. Superb. So how do we actually start to do this? And David Marquette talks about a three-step process. So first is stop giving orders and give intent. The second is to ask, what do you think I'm thinking right now? So that's, in his language, want to dive the submarine to this depth. Okay, what am I thinking right now? What are you thinking? Is it safe to do so? Yes. So what does that mean? Are the hatches closed? Is the alarm sounded? All of those good things. So what am I thinking right now? That's where the technical competence comes in a little bit. And finally, asking, is it the right thing to do? That's the organizational clarity. So what does that mean in practice, and how can we actually take this forwards in our businesses? Well, in the first one, stopping orders and giving intent, this is a little bit also like, what would you do in my shoes? So yes, we've given the intent, and that's the clarity within the Smart 90 and the plan as to where we're going to do. But when somebody comes with a challenge, how do I do this? It's a little bit like saying, well, what do you think? What do you think if you were in my shoes? What do you think I would do? Or other language might be, come to me with solutions rather than problems. We've all heard that sort of thing. So instead of us jumping straight back, which a lot of us attempted to do, and saying, yes, Luke, that's what you should do. This is the one, that's what you should do. Actually getting Luke to come and think beforehand, these are some options, and then, okay, which one of these would you recommend, Luke, if you were in my shoes? It's a immediate shift. It's a subtle shift, but actually it makes an enormous difference within the business if we stop giving all the answers. That's one thing. And that can be done straight away. And David Marquette said that turned the submarine around in a way within 24 hours. But the second one then, which take a bit longer, is really starting to get to be thinking about what am I thinking right now? And that's is it safe to dive one? So that's okay. Well, yeah. This is what I would recommend. Luke says, okay, so what am I thinking then, Luke? What do I want to know? What's the things in there that I might be concerned about? And then the final one is, which takes it even longer, but we need to be getting to, is everybody's understanding of the big picture. So is it the right thing to do from the business point of view, but also from us as individuals? Is it the right thing to do? And that's where that real organizational clarity comes through. That's where the culture is around our values, our core purpose, our mission. The more that people understand that, the more that they can start to understand whether it's the right thing to do, and be thinking in the way that you would think. They're putting themselves in your shoes, and they've got that framework of values in the same way that you would. So it's addressing that challenge that I mentioned right at the beginning, where the biggest challenge was getting people to think in the way that we would think and behave in the way that we would. So that's essentially what we wanted to cover from our aspect on the area of empowerment. And the challenge that we'd like you to think about in particular is, what one key thing could you do differently to further empower your others in your team? So if you do nothing else but take away that challenge from today and something practical that you can do forwards, then that would be fantastic. So that's all that I want to say. But what I'd like to do now is introduce Claire Hill from Hill HR. Claire's worked with us we've known Claire for a number of years now. She's runs a great business, and she's working with teams all the time. And we thought it'd be great to ask Claire to give us a couple of insights into how she thinks about empowerment.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Good morning to everybody. For those that I don't know, my name's Claire Hill. My business is Hill HR Consultancy. So we're a team of 4 We typically support small businesses that don't have HR in the business, and we go and support them. So when Kevin asked me, or Caroline asked me to look at empowerment, I first of all kind of reached for the dictionary and thought, well, what is the actual definition of empowerment? So I got two interesting definitions. One is the authority or power given to somebody to do something. And the second was the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. So you could apply that to both personal and to business life. And in the workplace specifically, you know, there has to be a balance between empowerment versus control. And that's what we've already heard. Giving employees full autonomy and empowerment over how to do their jobs and to make decisions, you know, can be a risk, especially if empowerment is not part of your culture, of your organization, or it comes with no boundaries and no guidelines. I mean, quite often some of our clients, when we talk about empowerment within the team, they'll say, well, what happens if they don't make good decisions, or they don't act in the company's interests, or they don't do as I would do as the business owner? And those are some of the things, you know, that we often hear. And many companies say that they want their people to have autonomy, and they want them to have the ability to be their authentic selves at work. But in reality, that quite often comes with restrictions imposed by the management. And as we know, too many restrictions can often stifle an employee's ability to make them feel, and it makes them feel micromanaged, I suppose is the best way to describe that. So we can see that empowerment and control, it's a really fine balance of getting that right. There are lots of attitudes and attributes that people either have or they don't have. And things like, you know, passion, thinking for themselves, and commitment. And these are some of the things that you can't often teach people to have. They're quite often, they'll have them or they don't have them. And also as business owners, for those of us that own the business, that we have got to understand that our employees are not going to love our business like we love our business. Yes, we can have great employees. We can have employees that work really hard and that are committed to us, but they are not going to have that passion for the business, that kind of thinking of the business 24/7 that we have as the business owners. But you can't control your employees, your teams, especially in the remote working environment that many of us are in. We can't see our teams all the time. So we have to create an environment that allows our people to get on to do what they are supposed to do. And quite often when we're with our clients, we see one of two things. We see either too much empowerment, so literally no support, get on and do it. Often the individual might not have the skill, the knowledge, the ability, and doesn't have the support behind it. And that leaves them feeling awful about their job and unhappy. Or we see the other side where there's kind of no empowerment, they're micromanaged, they're controlled. And again, that leaves them feeling the same, kind of with no value and, you know, no challenge. So we kind of see the two. So you can understand that it is a real balance of getting that right. So what are the benefits of empowering your employees, your team? So this is what we're finding. Clearly, empowerment is linked to job satisfaction. And that in turn is linked to employee retention. We know recruitment is really challenging at the moment. So if we can retain our staff in their roles, then that's much easier than having to go through the hiring process all the time. Where we can empower our teams, then that comes with a commitment and loyalty to the company. They want to stay with the company. It gives them a sense of value and meaning. They're happy at the company, they're happy in their jobs, and that translates into good performance, which translates into great productivity. And also lower turnover of staff. They're not going to want to leave the company so much. And obviously, as I said, the recruitment costs as well. So how can we empower our employees, our teams? It can start at the onboarding process. This is a great place, right at the start of employment, when you're onboarding your new hires into your organization. It's a great place to actually set out expectations to the new member of the team, to introduce the culture, to introduce kind of you know, how things are done, how you like things to be done. So it's almost like starting as you mean to go on. But there's also a process before that, which is the recruitment process. And again, that's a great place to be looking at starting to introduce that, you know, we very much empower our teams. This is how we like to empower them. And when you're going through the recruitment process, you can actually hire on making sure that you've got the right people with the right skills in the right roles. And you can also recruit on some of those softer skills, like, you know, like passion, like how do you know, like the thinking. Ensure your team, the next thing is, once the individual is in your business, ensure your team understands the company's purpose. Ensure that you share with them the vision of the company, the goals of the company. In other words, the company's why. Why does the company do what the company does? Share that with your team so they feel engaged with the business and they feel part of the business. Ensure they're clear about what their role is, what their responsibilities are, and the expectations within that role, so that those boundaries are all clear to them. Engage with your team. So it's not just about asking for their input, you know, but ask your team to be part of decision-making processes. You know, they're the ones that do the job. They're the ones that quite often talk to your clients, to your customers. They're the ones that work with the processes that are in place. So ask them, how does it work? What do you think could be improved? Where do you think the areas that we need to develop on? So ask them for ideas and for insights. And also in the other side of that is give them feedback. You know, encourage within the business honest and open feedback. And remember, feedback is a two-way thing. So feedback from both parties. You know, and also, you know, give them recognition, positive recognition within the team, and show your appreciation and say you're there to support them. You know, offer that support to them. Your door's open, you know, encourage them to come and talk to you, whatever the issue. And in line with that, communication, build an environment where they are not scared to ask you for help. You know, no question is a silly question, no question is too small. So build that environment. They're not scared to ask for help. They're not scared to ask questions, and they're not scared to make mistakes. We've heard that before. You know, obviously, when people keep making constant mistakes, yes, that's a problem. But, you know, when they're learning, when, you know, they're taking on something they're not sure about, mistakes are going to be made, and allow that to happen. But it's all about learning from those mistakes, because we know, obviously, that people don't learn unless they make these kind of errors. Develop them to be leaders. Okay, be there to support them. Talk to them about their career aspirations, not as well as their professional ones. Talk about their personal ones as well. And this can be done at their regular performance reviews or just at a coffee catch up. You know, however you engage with your staff. And as well as their normal tasks that are set within their job description, you could consider delegating a lead to them on a project. You know, give them a little bit of additional responsibility that may or may not sit within their normal role. So that could be lead on a project they're doing, or give them ownership of something, because that can develop them. It can expand their thinking. It can create that kind of sense of value and creativity within them as well. And it'd be something for them to show that they have, you know, additional strengths. And it can challenge them on areas where actually they need a little bit of development on as well. And you're there to support them. Other members can be there to support them. So that's a great way as well of empowering people. Support growth and learning opportunities as well. You know, if your team talk to you about wanting to do something in terms of growth and learning, support that. Demonstrate that you trust your team members. You know, this will be a huge boost to their confidence as well. And empowerment, obviously we've talked about empowerment of employees, but empowerment very much exists within teams. And if we empower our people and our teams correctly, we'll actually find that empowerment exists within the team as well. So they'll start empowering each other within the team without you actually being there, and they'll start to be self-managed, and they'll start to make their own decisions without you kind of always being present. Get to know your team, get to know them personally, get to know something about them. So when you interact with them, it's not purely on a transactional or business thing, you know, get to know them. And finally, if you're going to empower your teams, you need to walk the walk. And if you don't know something, if, you know, a team member comes to you and says, I'm not sure about this, and you don't say so. Say, you know, I'm honestly not sure about this either, but let's find out together. You know, that's a great way of doing it. So in summary, build a culture of trust, include empowerment on the onboarding process, share your company's visions, purpose and goals with your teams, be honest with your feedback and expect feedback, encourage open communication, delegate leadership on projects and additional responsibilities, develop growth opportunities within the business, and encourage team empowerment.
Fantastic, Claire. That's absolutely excellent. Thank you very much indeed for that. Really, really appreciate you sharing those things. And some great lessons there, and also some couple of good comments in the chat. So Rosie was also talking about that communication, the right tone of voice, and celebrating and recognizing the highs as well as learning from the lows. So recognizing, and also Stu is making a point in the chat there about not all of us have got team members as in employees, but we're probably all working with outsourced people, and they are also people that we can bring into that and think about it in the same way as how do we empower them to do that work, even if they're not directly employed with us as well. So I think some really, really good things there. Very much appreciate that, Claire. Without wishing to always ask you, Matt, first, what were some of the things that really struck you from the empowerment aspect?
For me, what I really sort of took away from that is that with the empowerment, it all starts with your values, with your purpose, your vision, and for us, I always thought we were pretty strong on that, but I realized that after being challenged very well by Louise in the last smart board, was that ours are very woolly, and we got some work to do around that. And I think once the staff and all the team are clear on the values, the purpose, your why, you can get greater buy-in and just a better team. And also again around the business rhythm, just ties so well into that. I guess them having a clear idea of what they're doing, where we're going, and just knowing what's going on makes such a difference to the team. Yeah. So I got quite a few takeaways from the session on Tuesday, which we've implemented some straight away. Right. It was very good.
Can you give us one thing, maybe?
Well, one of the things is just getting a couple of our really key staff to step up a bit and actually trust them to take it forward. A lot of it, another thing that came out of it was the trust element. And, is we got a couple of really key people who are really good. And I think it's part of the owner's trap is you're so reluctant to give up, or it's the hardest thing to give up stuff. And, we took the decision almost straight after the session. I'm going into production by invitation only now. And Toby's going to pick up that side of things. And he's really stepped up over the past few months. And, that can really get me to focus on some sales development, the strategic direction of the business, rather than just pumping orders out the door. So right. So that it was good. It was very good.
Excellent, thank you. Stu, you were there as well, running one of the breakout rooms as well. Thank you for that. What sort of things struck you?
I think it was obviously because I'm sort of a one-man band. I haven't got a team to kind of empower as such. But I think the key thing is ownership. Just as Matt was saying, about if your team own the direction of travel, if they own the values, the purpose, everything else, then, and they're not being told these are our values, this is our purpose, just kind of fall in line. But if there's a sense of ownership, then that trust builds, but also then people then being empowered to make those decisions themselves. It's kind of like the submarine sort of captain, an analogy that you used, Kevin. And I think it is just, but it's also the thing that I kind of mentioned on Tuesday was actually all of us have got people outside our immediate employee that are part of our team, whether accountants, bookkeepers, VAs, kind of other people that help us run the business. And I think it's keeping them in the loop about kind of values and purpose, and sort of empowering them to actually kind of do their job properly because they own kind of, you know, part of that journey as well. So for me, those are the two takeaways.
Brilliant. Good stuff. Thank you. I'm going to save Claire till last because she did the master presentation on there. So Graham, from your what sort of challenges, or how do you approach empowerment? What do you see as some of the takeaways from the theme, but also maybe some challenges that you face perhaps at Citizen with empowerment?
Yeah, I think it's Matt with the purpose and the vision and your core values, and it's something that I think Matt just said he's revisited his, and Mel knows that we've just started to revisit ours. Now we've started to include the team more on the Smart 90. We started doing the Smart 90 with just myself and Martin, but now there's actually 5 of us in the business that are now working on it. And that's made us revisit and change a few things, because there's obviously different opinions and ideas coming from the team that are working with us. So, yeah, we're very much in the process of rechanging, revisiting, and re-looking at our core values and our proposition.
Great. Okay, good. Faith, how do you approach it? Because obviously you've got a relatively large team, one of the larger teams in the group here. So how do you manage that balance of allowing people to have empowerment, encouraging empowerment, but equally making sure that it's still under some sort of control?
I think you're presuming that I do all of these things, Kevin. No, it is. I think it's very much about the trust thing that I think Claire mentioned that as well, that you have to allow for the fact that people aren't going to necessarily do things the way that you would do them. And you kind of mentally have to let go of that and give them the opportunity to fly. And you know, people will make mistakes, but then it's coming back to those conversations afterwards to say, you know, how did you feel that went? You know, is there anything you would have done differently? And just kind of giving them the freedom and the space to be empowered, but ensuring, yeah, as you said, that they're not just left to it and floundering around because they don't understand exactly what your expectations are. So it's very much a constant kind of check back on where they're at and where you're at and what your expectations are, definitely.
Yeah, all right, very good. Gary, what about you in Platform 81?
Yeah, I think it's as a couple of the guys mentioned, I think it's quite difficult really with the kind of owner's trap thing really to almost let go and let your kind of senior leadership team or senior management team kind of push the business forward. But I think essentially if you want to scale the business and you want to grow, you know, there does have to be that empowerment with your staff. And I think as long as they've got the resources that they need and the kind of, you know, the top level support from the business owner, you know, we've personally seen our business scale since we've given that empowerment over to the staff. But I think kind of like the guys say, really, it's just, I suppose the only caution side is the owner's trap, really. It's that letting go, as Faith has just said, really. It's probably the most difficult thing.
And how do you keep on top of things, Platform 81?
I think the main, the business rhythm meetings are really the area that we kind of keep a bit of focus and just check everything is in line, check everybody's kind of on focus with all their goals and, you know, whether that be personal goals or business goals, that regular business meetings that we have, whether it's weekly or monthly, that's the kind of area that we've kind of improved on over the last probably 12 months, really.
Yeah.
Giving people the autonomy to kind of do their jobs, know that they've got the autonomy to, you know, make suggestions and things that can improve the business, you know, but also obviously do the day-to-day job, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good. Okay, Paul, what would you add here?
I think the only thing I would add to it really is about having like a process. So like if somebody's about to do something, it's really good to have like a defined process that you want them to complete. Obviously you want to get their input and their ideas and for them to personalize it. But I think then what we've had happen in our business is when something hasn't gone well, we kind of go back to reviewing the process together instead of blaming the individual. because half the time it's just completely a lack of training on my part, or I've missed steps that I would, it's like you say, when you let something go and you delegate, there's probably a million things you do in your own head that you don't even document. And it's like, why did you do that? So I've always been a massive believer in review the process together instead of just instantly getting into a blame game of, why have you done that like that? That was the only thing I'd add.
Yeah, like that. Very nice. Good. Matthew Parsons?
So when someone says empowerment to me, I was thinking the art of delegation to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what everybody's already said is important. I've personally not making sure that the owners can get pulled back into the day-to-day, the importance of having regular meetings, obviously business rhythm, which I know on occasions I've struggled with, or someone hasn't led the charge rather than waiting on me to do it. But also trust I think is a major factor. And like Paul's just sort of alluded to as well, processes, if they've got a process to follow, how can you expect them and empower them to do something the same way you would, to the same ability? But I think the other side of this is I think whoever you delegate to, or your team or your managers, is not to fear it, and I suppose not to punish people. I think like what Paul alluded to, everybody makes mistakes. I think as long as we all learn from them, and as business owners, we've all made mistakes. And I think we're all entitled to make those mistakes, as long as we don't repeat them more than once. I think that's the importance of this whole process, really. So yeah, trying to walk away from the day to day and just let people get on with what they need to do, because most of the time they know what they need to deliver upon.
So having the confidence a little bit to let people experiment and make their own mistakes. Yeah.
I think the other thing I'd probably add to that as well is then reward them when they do good. I think the other side of this is as well, so they know that you're really happy with the work they've delivered. I think that can often be overlooked by all of us. I suppose we have a level of expectation. They think they've done really well, and we just carry on and think, so I think there's an element of making sure we actually reward it and actively do point it out to the team and things as well.
Great, good stuff. Sam, can I bring you in here? What would you add to the discussion so far?
The thing I struggle a little bit with is a business rhythm. I think I need to get my head around that a little bit. I don't quite understand that protocol. KPIs as well, that was mentioned in the meeting the other day. In manufacturing, sometimes it's hard to work out a KPI that works. Because how is it measurable in certain production? If we're making bespoke stuff all the time, we're not making tens or thousands of them. It's a one item. So how do you measure someone's KPI in that game? And also, some people are just not interested in being empowered. They just want to come to work, earn their money and go home. So you can sometimes try and boost them and try and involve them, and nothing happens.
So that's a really interesting point. Yeah.
It's not their way. They're not inclined. It's not their business. They just want to get paid, go home, and just turn over some income. So it's a bit difficult if you haven't got the right people who want to be empowered.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Claire, what do you think about that? Because you see a lot of businesses. What do you think of the point Sam's just raised there?
Yeah, I think in any business you're going to have the stars, the ones that are really motivated, but you're also going to have the really consistent workers and the ones that do just turn up. They turn up on time, they do their job, they go home. And that doesn't mean that they have to have or kind of be given more challenges and things like that, but they are feel empowered in their own way. So they feel empowered that they are coming to work, they're not being hassled, they are doing what they need to do. And they're very happy with that. So that's absolutely fine. And every business is going to have that mix of lots of different people in it, and that's quite normal.
Yeah. That is brilliant. Yeah. So they're empowered in a way by not micromanaging them. Yeah.
I mean, we still listen to we have the meetings at the end of the day, and we say to everybody, have you got any ideas? You've got this, you've got that. So everybody's sit in a room and they can say what they want. So we do give everybody the freedom to suggest things. So that's how it's working for us at the moment. Hopefully it'll improve a bit more. But.
Yeah, very good.
I had a really interesting meeting with someone the other day who's an employee in a kind of a sales role for the company that she works for, and she was saying that she's fairly new in post, and she's got to find her own leads and stuff, but she's not being supported. She didn't feel, and the team that she was working with didn't feel that they were supported from that office in terms of being given the resources to actually win those clients. So she's very much self-started, go on LinkedIn, find all these leads, but then actually they're not being given anything, then send out to prospective clients. And so she feels that she can't be as efficient and as good as her job because actually she doesn't have the resources. So one of the suggestions that we worked through was, because they've just taken on 4 new salespeople, as a team, work out what you want from that office and go as a team and say, if you want us to do our jobs properly, these are the kind of things we need. And it is about actually, if you're going to empower people, give them the tools to do it properly.
Right. Good, excellent. Mel, anything you'd like to add, having heard around the discussion and from? Yep.
Well, actually, the one thing that I was going to kind of major on, what Gary and Stu have both talked about, which was, ensuring that individuals have got what they need to do their job really well, and asking them what they think they need, creating a really, and then on from that, creating a really positive environment for people to work in. So Sam's been really good at this actually over the last few months, creating a nicer environment, because obviously it's quite kind of manufacturing, quite dirty, isn't it, Sam? But they've got some nice offices, and they're bringing those employees kind of into the nice offices to have the kind of morning and afternoon huddles to sort of give everybody the opportunity to enjoy the nice environment as well. So yeah, just making the working environment really, really positive. So people come to work and want to be there as a starting point.
Good, excellent. Which is interesting, because you've covered a couple of there's a Gallup 12 set of 12 questions, which are used quite often to get a little bit of feedback from employee satisfaction and how happy they are essentially at work. And one of those is about the environment. One of those is if they've got the tools to do the job that they need. And then it moves up almost like the Maslow hierarchy of needs to more sort of self-actualization and sort of type stuff. But a little bit what Sam and Claire were saying there, that some people are quite happy with the basics. And as long as they can feel empowered in that, then that's great. Louise, what would you bring in?
I think we've had a really good in the round discussion. We've touched on all kinds of subjects. A couple of the things that I really noted were, going back to what Paul said, reviewing the process together and not getting into a blame game. I think it's really easy to say, why the hell didn't you do that? Instead of looking at why did it happen, rather than why did you do that? Thinking about making sure that you have given people the right processes, the right lead, the right training. Because if you look at the 8 wastes, one of the key 8 wastes is skills misuse, which is delegating work to people who haven't been given the right training in order to achieve it. So I think that was quite fun. Noticing the good stuff, that was the other thing. I mean, so often we don't notice the good stuff. We only think about the bad stuff and try and correct that. But, I've always had a firm belief in, identify what people are doing right, even if it's little things, and work out how you can do more of that. And then just coming back to what you were saying, Sam, about some people don't want to be empowered. Interestingly, my background is also in manufacturing, so we have a little bit of that similarity there. And I've always believed, there are those who want to be empowered and who, you can work with and take forward, but it's really important to have people who just want to do a good job. Don't want to do any more than that. And I know I saw something yesterday. I can't remember what the new word in the dictionary is, but it's something to do with people who just want to be at work and do the absolute minimum. And it's quite a derogatory term that's gone into the dictionary yesterday. And I was thinking about that and thinking, there is a problem with people who just want to do the absolute minimum, but you do need people who want to come to work, do the job, and go home. You know exactly where you stand with them. And they're a really valuable part of the team, because you don't need to, as we're talking about, you don't need to worry about doing more with them than just encouraging them to do the job right. So it's that mixture. I think we've had a really good conversation.
Very good. So have a think about the this, because it comes back to almost the leadership style, our personality styles, this moving from being the leader follower model. So, we're the one that basically stands up front and tells everybody what to do and how to do it, transitioning from that to more of the leader type model where we've got that little bit more of engagement with people and from people. And think about our personality styles. We went around the room earlier on. Those of us that are in the sort of top left-hand quadrant, the Panthers, or the Hawks, whatever you want to call them, the high Ds, really great for getting the business off the ground and really pushing things forwards, driving things forwards. We can struggle as we get people in the business then to let things go a little bit and be confident to release that control, because we like to have that control. We like to direct. So just have a think about that and how that might impact some of us. It does start with us. If Claire made a really good point in her presentation on Tuesday about the trust aspect and that vulnerability bit. If we don't know the answer to something, as a high D and as a high entrepreneur anyway, we might feel we have to have the answers and provide the answers. But if we don't know the answers, it's perfectly acceptable. In fact, it's better to admit that and essentially, as Claire said, say, okay, I don't actually have the answer to that. Why don't we go and find it out together? Let's work on it together and find that out together. And that's starting with that culture of saying, actually, you know what? It's all right to not necessarily know the answer and admit that, but let's then work together to find out the answer. It's better than to pretend that we all do know what we're doing, but essentially it's then the blind leading the blind, but also we don't have that trust coming through. Is that a fair summary of that, Claire?
Yeah, it is. And that's exactly what David Marquette said when he was talking about going onto the new submarine. He didn't know how to use that submarine because he'd only been trained in the nuclear one. He didn't know. So when they said, boss, what does that button do? He said, well, I don't know what it does, but, let's find out what it does. I don't think they pressed it, but,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. And, again, a couple of people have mentioned this. The challenge with delegation, if you like, in empowerment is doing it in a way where we're not just abdicating it. We're not just saying, okay, well, you go and sort it. There's no checks and balances, no control. And we do have to ensure that people, as Louise was saying, have that technical competence as well. They know what they're doing. They've had the training, so they've got that technical competence, but then they also have the organizational clarity as to where we're going and what's important. That's where all the values come in and all of those, and the direction, and giving intent as opposed to giving those orders, which is another key thing that comes out of the David Marquette submarine captain video. And of course, Smart 90 is one of our key ways, and the business rhythm that goes with it that Matt started off talking about, Matt Busby, is absolutely one of our key ways of helping to encourage that. It's not the complete and whole answer, but it's a big part of getting that culture, that rhythm, that trust, but that clarity going, but equally enabling us to then know what it is that we're keeping each other accountable to over time. Don't forget to take a look at www.bizsmarts.co.uk to access a great range of resources to help you in your scale-up journey. So that's bizsmarts.co.uk, which is bizsmarts.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.